Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Straight On Till Morning. The Neverland Empty Reel. Like a firefly in the mist or a fish from the darkest deep, the light came bobbling through the jungle gloom. This one was tinged orange like the last ember of a really good fire. Wendy felt warm all over just looking at it. The tiny ball of light soon resolved into another fairy. She had darker skin than Tinker Bell's that was orangey red at the tips of her ears, which were a little longer than the other fairies and more pointed. Her hair was hard to focus on, more foam or spear than the actual strands. A cloud of the reddish-brown hair had ribbons dividing it into two big puffs, each side of her head. She wore a simple poncho belt around the middle, but it was hemmed nicely and not ragged like Tinker Bell's. The belt was prettily tooled and had an intricate metal gem buckle that Wendy desperately wanted a closer look at with a magnifying glass. Well, I didn't even know you knew the call. If Wendy had expected some sort of intricate fairy greeting, she was more than taken aback by the new fairy's very casual tone. Tinker Bell opened her mouth, and Wendy waited, wincing, for her usual intemperate response. Instead, the fairy took a deep breath. I know the call, sister. I am fairy. Really? I haven't seen you in any of the mid-season fetes, or the blossom gatherings, or the acorn hunts, or... I don't like crowds. You don't seem to like much of what it means to be a fairy. More revealed about Wendy's temperamental little friend. Fairies were apparently gregarious, social creatures like people or horses. Not the lonely, solitary haunters of hills and isolated groves Wendy had imagined, which came together for the rare dance around a ring of mushrooms. But Tinker Bell obviously shunned the company of others like herself, preferring the company of a few giant humans like Peter Pan. I need help. Tinker Bell put out her arms in supplication, trying to change the subject. I'll say, the other fairy retorted with a raised eyebrow. Then, I was hoping this was a friend's invite. I don't usually travel so far in the pernicious forest. It's dangerous. There are quarremoles around here, you know. I bet you don't even have any nectar or cake to offer the weary fellow traveler, do you? Tinker Bell shook her head morosely, looking at the ground. Wendy started to fumble around her bag, along with her hastily thrown together belongings. She was sure there was a packet of throat lozenges, maybe a mint pillow or two. And she remembered her main directive, to stay hidden. She couldn't help out her little companion, even if she wanted to. Reluctantly, she settled back down. A third glow appeared during the awkward silence. It zipped along more definitely through the gloom, and then stopped in the space next to the two fairies, revealing itself to be a fairy prince. Alright, perhaps it was just a male fairy. But either way, Wendy was thrown. He was devastatingly handsome. He had dark brown skin and high cheekbones and a broad chest. He sported a neatly folded kit and sash that did little to cover said chest. His head was thrown, and his ears were extremely long, tapering to filaments that waved gently as he spoke. A weapon like a sword hung from his waist, hiltless and slender and golden. Even at his diminutive size, he radiated confidence, martial skills, and a general calmness that spoke to all the best characteristics of a leader of men or fairies. Oh, it's Tinker Bell! What a surprise! And hello, Barry Loon. He was polite enough to Tinker Bell, but he bowed to another girl. It was more than a little dangerous for the three of us to be gathered here together like this. Even criminal in the area will sense our presence. What's the emergency? I don't know, ask her, Barry Loon snorted, tilting her head toward Tinker Bell. I have to find the first. Have either of you seen them or heard of them lately? But both fairies looked at her, shocked at her question. What is this about? The boy fairy asked seriously. Are you in trouble? Tinker Bell looked a little cagey. No, not me. Who then? Peter Pan lost his shadow and seeks them out for help. Barry Loon burst out laughing. The male fairy just looked gravely disappointed. Wendy cringed, feeling the look was directed at her as well. Bell let the boy to his own fate, he suggested, putting a hand on her shoulder in a brotherly fashion. For how long are you going to keep rescuing and following after that big ugly human? He's not human, Tinkerbell responded angrily, so angry that she put her hands on her hips, and her backside lifted up and her wings buzzed. All right, calm down. He's not exactly human, the boy said soothingly, while giving Barry Loon an eye roll, but his friends are. Tinkerbell, if he's such a great human adventurer, he can take care of himself. You can come with the pink petal harvest. Ooh, Barry Loon, well, squeaked would be the closest approximation to the way she jingled. She spun and grabbed the fairy's hands. Me too, let's be partners. If we could be a trio, we could be if little Miss Boring Wings over here will come. As nasty as it sounded, Wendy could tell that Barry Loon was making a real effort to reach out to Tinkerbell. The offer was genuine despite her tone and whatever it all meant. Tinkerbell shook her head. I have to find Peter. I know where his shadow is. It's with the pirates. And they're planning to destroy all of Neverland. Peter needs to hear about this before he reaches to the first and makes some sort of terrible bargain or mistake. Then we'll have to go after Captain Hook and stop him. Planning to destroy all of Neverland? Barry Loon sneered. Uh-oh. The boy fairy sighed, shaking his head. It sounds like you just heard another round of games between Peter and the pirates. But all right, Belle, a comrade of mine saw the dements of the first appear on the northwestern corner of the island, at the base of the Chanting Peninsula, east of the Shimmering Sea. Thank you, Tinkerbell said with relief, and gave him a little bow. Good luck, weirdo, Barry Loon said with a toss of her head. Guess we'll see you next time you need something, or you're finally tired of the company you keep, shall we? Hand in hand, she and the boy fairy rose perfectly in tandem, more gracefully than the most skilled ballerina Wendy had ever seen, more smoothly than any ice skater. But then, just before disappearing in the depths of the jungle darkness as the little bobbing glows, the boy fairy turned and winked, directly at Wendy. She fell back, overcome by the direct smiling gaze of the tiny man-at-arms. A strange thought popped into her head. Shrinking or glowing, clinging to a boy as he rode up in the air on the winds, his dragonflies began beating strongly behind them. Breathless, she staggered out of her hiding place, feeling a trifle disconnected from things. Seeing Tinkerbell knocked some sense back into her. The little fairy was hanging in the air like an old toy tied to a string to amuse a baby or a cat, but then forgotten. She twisted a right and then a left as the breeze nudged to her. Her gaze was fixed on the disappearing lights of her friends. Poor Tinkerbell. How entirely wrong Wendy had gotten her. What she thought was fairy affection, artfully rag dress, tousle hair and messy bun, snobby and antisocial behavior, was not de rigueur for fairies at all. The other two seemed to spend all their time at parties and gatherings. They both had neatly tailored apparel, complete with perfect high-fashion little accessories. Tink cared less about her appearance and whatever quest she was currently on, whatever fun she was having, whatever the Lost Boys and Peter were up to, whatever her own mischief involved. Oh yes, Tinkerbell did appreciate the finer things, like her delicate little bedroom, but on her own terms, and most importantly on her own. She didn't fit in with the other fairies, and they obviously had issues with her chosen way of life. No wonder she was so enamored of Peter Pan. She finally had a companion like herself, and of course, she would be jealous and unwilling to share. Without him, she might be alone. Tinkerbell, Wendy said softly. The fairy spun around the air, obviously not having heard her approach. Her eyes were filled with brightness and wet. She shook her head until physically removed any traces of emotion and crossed her arms resolutely. Tinkerbell, Wendy bit her lip. The sort of person who abandoned her extremely cozy people to live a life with an unapproved boy. a girl who wore tatters and didn't care. Well, she wouldn't be the sort of girl either to discuss her feelings. She was obviously already embarrassed by what the human girl had witnessed. I feel we should get started on our way to this enchanted peninsula, shouldn't we? Tinker Bell let out an audible sigh, relieved at the direction Wendy's statement had gone. Chanting, not enchanted. You'll understand when we get there. All right, let's. And that's when the creature leapt from the bush, grabbing Tinker Bell out of the air. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.